This is the evaluation and analysis of performance for A-level PE part 2. So let's continue. So as I outlined, what I would have is the drill for the skill component, but what I will also be looking for is a fitness component as well. So we'll just move on very quickly with this. So for session 1, week 1, in relation to the skill based, I would make sure that they complete the tackle box and measure how many successful tackles they can achieve in 3 minutes. What I would do then is start them in a closed drill, and this is where they're just focusing specifically on the relevant teacher points. So the perfect model for that would be that they've got to have their hips nice and low, their hands up out in front of them, and their head up so they're facing towards the target. When they make when they actually go into the execution phase, when they make contact, they've got to make contact with their feet really close together, so they're and knees bent, so that they're forcing their way through the tackle. And also in the execution phase, they need to be wrapping their hands around the back of the person that they're tackling, so that they can draw their knees into them and therefore make them fall down onto the floor. So within this drill here, that's exactly what they would need to be doing. So I'd complete 15 of those and then swap over. And then what I would do to progress that then is to just have it in a one-to-one situation. So initially I would start with walking tackles. So as they're moving forwards, this person has to adopt the relevant and correct technique, and you perform 5 of those each. You would then progress that into a jogging, and then eventually a 3/4 pace where the person is actually trying to evade them as opposed to just run straight into them. But you keep the channel nice and narrow so that they're able to effect the tackle. So what I would also be looking for is bilateral transfer here. So we're moving from the left to the right hand side. So trying to, once they've successfully done it on their stronger shoulder, is to move it onto their weaker shoulder. Alright, so as I mentioned, I would do fitness sessions as well to improve this person's tackling ability. So for this, what I would also need to do is test. So I could do the 1 rep max test, or I could do the complete the press up test, and then what I'd be looking to do is see at least a 20% increase in their first, their middle, and then their final scores. So I'd also be breaking it down, the whole session overall, and also the entire program into different cycles. So that would be micro cycles, which would be 1 week, and then meso cycles, which would be 3 weeks, and then we will review the targets. The reason I'll be doing this is to make sure that we can keep the person focused, and we can make sure that the targets are relevant and accurate to the success of the person during the program. Okay, so for this, I was doing a free weight session, and you could also do a body weight session, but primarily I'd be focusing on chest, arms, back, core, and as I said, would be the 1 rep max test. Now I'm looking for dynamic strength here, so I'm looking to start with 60%, but hopefully end with 75 to 85% of their 1 rep max score. So I'm looking for 3 sets to start with of 10 times 8 reps. So it's 3 sets of 8 reps initially in that first session. All right, and then week 2, what I would do for the skill session here is start with the front on tackle. Again, start with walking just as a recall, so that you make sure that they can groove the skill. Move into jogging, and then into a 3/4 pace, as I said, with evasion, making sure that they're transferring from to the left and right hand side to get that positive transfer. And then in here you can see in this drill what they have to do then is the coach shouts a different colour, so it's either red, blue or white. So now it's about a little bit about more decision making, because the skill itself of tackling is open, but we need to develop it from a closed to an open just to make sure that the skill is grooved and we've got the relevant stimulus response bond. So in this one here, they've got to effect 4 tackles from different people, so they will come up against different challenges, be it the size or the speed of the person that they're doing. Now, how we would do that then here in the next drill is we're overloading it. So we've got a 2 versus 1 situation. So we've got 2 players versus the 1 defender coming around the corner. So then they have to make a decision and then also effect a tackle in a slightly more dynamic situation. All right, so for my second fitness session, it would be chest, arms, back, and core. Again, it's the 60%, 3 sets here, but I'm looking for 10 reps as opposed to the 3. So we're increasing the amount of reps we're doing from the first to the second session. All right, now for the next skill session, what I'll be looking to do then is them to completing different types of tackles. So here we've got the tackle bags, and here we've got the shoulder bag, which are slightly higher. So there's slightly different technique with those, and it's making sure that they're getting their hands up nice and early, that their head up, but they're dropping the hips down as they're approaching each one of those bags. And this is a massed practice because you would hit one, then the other, and so on and so forth, and you till you've completed 6 tackles, and then you would rotate round again. So we're overloading quite significantly, and we're also working on that fitness component as well. So in here, again, it's slightly about decision making. So in this next draw, it's either you're calling A, B, C, or D, and one person will move into the center for that tackle to take place. So how we would progress that is have 2 players in the center. So what we're trying to do here is make a decision about who's going to be making the tackle. It's very important that we start to develop this and moving into more of an opened environment or a varied practice. Alright, so session 3 for my fitness component. Here we're moving up to 70% of their 1 rep max test, and we're back down to 8 reps though, but we're increasing overall the percentage. So whatever they did for chest, you're increasing that by 5% there. And again, it's on all of those activities as we said before. Also, what I would start to introduce though is a handoff activity. So this is an exercise where you have to hold the ball in one hand and hand off against 6 different pads. It's quite dynamic and very effective. It's strength based. So in this one here, so we're moving on to week 4. Before I would have completed this, I think at the end of at the end of this week, what we'll be looking to do is review their progress. So what we're starting to do now, I would start to do is build them up into units. So by that, we're working with other people. So in this session, in this activity here, what you've got is 4 sets of attackers are out on the outside, and then you've got 3 on the inside. Same as before, you call A, B, C, or D, and then those 3 people will then attack through the center. And it's about affecting the tackle first and foremost, whether it's the left or right hand side, but then now starting to call, so using the communication to say who has the man and who's going to hit that man. Once that's completed, the next group will go either A, B, C or D. So you're overloading the practice, and the 3 defenders now are having to work very hard in the middle. So the next activity I'll do is a broken defense. So for this one, you've got 4 attackers, so the coach calls the number of defenders. So it might be it's 1 versus 2, or 2 versus 2, or 3 versus 4. Again, we're looking at using the relevant technique, which is, as I mentioned before, is those low hips, wide center of wide base, low center of mass, so we've got good stability when we're making the tackle, but working together now as a unit, which is obviously what it will be like in a game. So for the fitness session here, we've got 70%. We're doing 3 sets, but we're doing 10 reps. So we've increased the reps and also the percentage comparatively to the other week. I would also now introduce some body weight exercises. So you can use this in a triangular system. So once you've completed your chest sets, you then complete some press-ups. Once you've completed your arm sets, you then complete some sit-ups. And you rotate through the back and core. So overloading more than that 70%. Now, because we're at the end of the first of the macro cycles, what I would do is then retest what their 1 rep max is, and then what we do is adjust the percentage accordingly. So for my 5th session, week 5, session 1, what I'll be looking to do is, as I said, is retest the tackle box, and then start as we did before, which was the 3 defenders and also the broken defense here. Now, what I would also be starting to do is do some line speed work. So as long as their tackle technique is in place and they're able to transfer from the left and right hand side, it's now about how quickly I can cover that ground. So we'll complete these 2 exercises to start with, and then as a unit of 4 now, we start to work on how quickly I can move from these cones up to those to effectively carry out a positive tackle. Alright, so for my fitness sessions, again, we're still working on chest, arms, back and core, but we're building up to that 75%, but we've reduced it down to 8 reps. But we have continually had, we've still got the body weights, the press-ups and the sit-ups to go in between each one of those sessions there, each one of those activities, not sessions, sorry. Okay, so week 6 here, where we're looking at our skill-based. So we would start with the line speed, so making sure that they can affect that, as mentioned before. And now what we're looking at is the different types of defense, and therefore the different types of tackles that we're going to do. So the coach is going to call either drift or blitz or cover. So depending on what they're going to call out will depend on whether we press really hard as a defensive line, if we drift over to the right or left hand side, or cover is what we call a soft defense, is where we're just dropping back and waiting for the attackers to make a decision. And again, we're introducing that decision component into those units before we make that effective tackle. Okay, so for week 6 for the fitness, again, it's a new 1 rep max, so we're adjusting that. So we're starting at 75% and we've got 10 reps. We're increasing the body weights in between these activities as well to 12 to overload the physicality. And then here we have week 7. Again, we would start now with the drift, blitz or the cover defense. That's about a 10 to 15 minute drill with alternating the attackers and the defenders so they get used to it. So what we'd also do now is start to build the blitz, which is where we're working 5-meter blocks, and we're trying to get the individual here, so this is my person, he's blitzing towards that person, which basically means running as quick as you can to close down the space. And then it's about now, when I blitz that person in there, have I got my eye on this person on the outside? So it's about where I put my body, making sure I've got a nice low center of mass, but also not too low that I'm not able to then change direction quickly and therefore have a high center of mass. So it's about finding that balance between the two to be able to change direction very, very quickly. Moving that on very quickly, I would introduce 2 defenders, and again working at blitzing but then holding the line as well to making sure that we're not overcommitting and then having these players outside. Finally, I would finish off with this in a larger situation where a unit of 4 are working against a group of 3, so we should be able to have success with that one there. All right, and then as we mentioned before, we've obviously got a new rep max, and here we're now at 80%. We're increasing the amount of reps, so decreasing the amount of reps because we've increased the percentage. But what we do is increase the amount of body weights that we've got, so it's times 14. Okay, and then into week 7, what we should be looking now is game-related scenarios. So what we have here is where the defense are given a situation, so it's on the halfway and they have to defend the line. So now, do they blitz? Do they cover, which means to kind of hold off, or do they drift up to this side here? Depending on what the picture is that we give them in front of them, they then make a decision and carry out an effective, an effective defensive line. And here, so we've got the ruck defense station. So this is where we would have the attackers there, and we've set up a ruck, and we're waiting for these guys to defend this situation here. Once that one's complete, they jog round to this station here, exactly the same. They would affect a defensive line, and then finally to that one there. So you would sort of rewind and then repeat. So we're creating more game-related situation. All right. So here we're now at 80%, and we've got 10 reps, and we've got the 14 reps for each one of the body weights increase. And then finally, what we're looking for in week 8 again is be able to effectively carry out the defensive pattern with the effective tackles for each one of the different situations we give them. And we should be able to move towards that game with sort of relative ease, because we've had these different scenarios thrown at us, so nothing should be a surprise. And then last but not least, what we do is we then retest, and that would be with the tackle box, as I mentioned before, and we're looking for them to get a higher score than they did when they first started our training program. We also retest the 1 rep max for each one of the different exercises, and then what we'll be doing in our next section is just talking about the justifications, the physiological, psychological, and also the adaptations that we're hoping to take place.